The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. 300 species filled the curved seats that rose like steps toward the dark ceiling. Light came from floating orbs that drifted slowly above them. The air smelled different to everyone because the station pumped custom atmospheres to each section. Breathed methane. Reptilians preferred humid warmth. The avians needed thin, cold air. In the center of the chamber stood Commander Park. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a calm face that hid his worry. He wore the dark blue uniform of the United Nations Space Fleet. 3 silver stars sat on his collar. He had negotiated peace treaties, trade agreements, and border disputes. He had never felt as nervous as he felt now. High Arbiter looked down at him from the central podium. She was nearly 8 feet tall, with a hard shell the color of dark bronze. 4 arms folded across her chest. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like broken mirrors. When she spoke, her voice clicked and hummed, translated instantly by the devices everyone wore. "Commander of Earth," she said, "you stand before the Council to answer serious charges. The evidence against your species is disturbing. We have watched humanity for 3 cycles. We have studied your transmissions, your broadcasts, your records. What we found has caused great concern." Kept his voice steady. "High Arbiter, I am prepared to address any concerns the Council may have." Gestured with one of her upper arms. The air in front of shimmered, and a holographic screen appeared. On it played a video that made his stomach tight. It showed a playground on Earth. Children ran and screamed. 2 boys pushed each other. A girl fell from a climbing structure and hit the ground. She lay still for a moment, then sat up, blood dripping from her knee. An adult walked over slowly, looked at the wound, and simply handed the child a small bandage. The child stuck it on her knee, stood up, and ran back to play. The chamber erupted in noise. Clicks, whistles, growls, all expressing horror. "Silence," commanded. The noise stopped. "Commander, explain what we have witnessed." Opened his mouth, but Ambassador spoke first. Was reptilian, covered in scales the color of wet stone. His species raised their young in silent underground pools where nothing could disturb them for 20 years. "I will tell you what we witnessed," said. "We witnessed a human child suffer injury while adults did nothing to prevent it. The child bled. The adults showed no urgency. The child was sent back into danger immediately. This is abuse." "That is not abuse," said firmly. "That is a playground. Children play. Sometimes they fall. They learn to be careful by." "By suffering," Scholar interrupted, "was avian, covered in blue and silver feathers. Her species was born with all knowledge already in their minds. The idea of learning through pain made no sense to her. You teach your young through pain." Tried to explain. "Not through pain, through experience. Children need to." Raised a hand, the screen changed. Now it showed a classroom. Small children sat at desks while an adult stood at the front speaking. The children looked tired. Some cried quietly. One child's thermal signature, overlaid on the image, showed elevated heart rate, stress hormones, fear response. "This is what you call school," said. "You confine your young in rooms for hours. You force information into their minds. Their bodies show clear signs of stress and fear, yet you call this education." Felt frustration rising. "School is how we learn. Yes, children sometimes find it difficult, but—" "Difficult?" stood up. "My translators must be broken. You admit that you place your young in situations they find difficult. You admit this openly. All children face challenges. That is how they grow." The chamber went silent again. But this silence was different. It was the silence of beings who had just heard something they could not understand. High Arbiter leaned forward. "Commander, I must ask you a direct question. Among my people, young remain in cocoons until they are mature enough to face the world. They know nothing of pain, fear, or struggle until they are ready. Among Ambassador's people, young float in protective pools, fed through tubes, touched by nothing. Among Scholar's people, young are born complete. They never need to learn anything the hard way." She paused. Humanity is different. You expose your young to danger, pain, fear, and struggle from their earliest days. We have one word for this practice. Weighted. Cruelty said. The word hung in the air. We believe, continued, that human children are victims. Your transmissions show them crying, fighting, bleeding, screaming. They show adults who watch and do nothing. They show young humans forced into institutions against their will. They show small, soft, helpless beings living in constant distress on a planet that is already trying to kill them. She stood up, all four arms spread wide. Earth is extreme gravity, extreme radiation, predators in every environment, poisons in your food, your water, your air, disease everywhere. Your own bodies fight against you constantly, and in this nightmare you raise your children the same way. You make them suffer. Shook his head. High Arbiter, you misunderstand everything about human childhood. Then explain, she said. Explain why human children are seen striking each other. Explain why they scream. Explain why they cry so often. Explain why adults allow this to happen. Thought about his own childhood. He thought about falling off his bicycle and his father picking him up, dusting him off, and telling him to try again. He thought about fighting with his sister over toys and then playing together an hour later. He thought about being scared on his first day of school and his mother holding his hand at the door. How could he explain any of this to beings who had never experienced it? Children play, he said slowly. Play sometimes looks like fighting. They are learning to navigate conflict. They cry because they have big emotions in small bodies. They struggle because struggling makes them strong. Adults watch because children need room to try, fail, and try again. We do not prevent all pain, we help them through it. Made a sound of disgust. You help them through pain instead of preventing pain. This is exactly what we feared. Humans are savages who brutalize their own young. That is not true. Then prove it, said. The chamber went quiet once more. The council requires proof, continued. You have 3 of your days. Show us that human children are not abused. Show us that your methods of raising young are not cruelty disguised as culture. If you cannot provide this proof, the council will have no choice but to act. Act how? Asked. Answered, sanctions, quarantine, and if necessary, military intervention to liberate human children from their oppressors. Felt cold. They were serious. The entire Galactic Council was prepared to go to war because they thought human children were being abused. 3 days, repeated. Provide proof, Commander, or face the consequences. Bowed slightly. I understand, High Arbiter. I will provide proof. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His mind raced. How could he prove that childhood was not cruelty? How could he show aliens that scraped knees and tears and fights over toys were normal, healthy, even good? Then an idea came to him, a crazy idea, a dangerous idea. He would bring children to the council. He pulled out his communicator and called Lieutenant aboard the UNSS Harmony. He said, I need you to do something that Command is going to hate. I need you to bring me 3 children, ordinary children, and I need them here in 2 days. There was a long pause. Sir, said carefully, did you just ask me to bring children to an alien tribunal that thinks we abuse them? Yes. Command will never approve this. I know. Another pause. I will find you the children, sir. Ended the call and looked up at the stars through the station window. Everything depended on what happened next. The shuttle from UNSS Harmony docked at Base 7 of Nexus Prime Station. Lieutenant stood at the airlock, checking her uniform one last time. Behind her, 3 children waited with varying degrees of patience. Was 7 years old. She had long black hair tied in 2 braids and carried a small bag that clinked with crayons and colored pencils. She was quiet, always watching, always thinking. She had not spoken more than 10 words during the entire trip, but she had filled 6 pages with drawings. Minyu was 9. He was the tallest of the 3 and took his role as the oldest very seriously. He stood straight, trying to look responsible, but the effect was ruined by the gap in his front teeth where 2 baby teeth had recently fallen out. He kept poking the empty space with his tongue. Was 6 and had not stopped talking since leaving Earth. She held a stuffed wolf toy under her arm. The wolf was gray and worn, with one button eye slightly loose. She called him, which meant sea, because she had gotten him on a trip to the ocean when she was 4. Went everywhere with her. She had screamed for 20 minutes when someone suggested leaving him on the ship. Looked at them and felt her stomach twist. She was bringing 3 ordinary children into the most important diplomatic situation in human history. If this went wrong, it would not just be her career that ended. It could be the future of humanity among the stars. The airlock opened. Commander Park stood on the other side, and behind him was Dr. Lee, the assigned to translate culture between humans and aliens. Lieutenant said, "Thank you for coming." Sir saluted, then stepped aside. "May I present Minyu?" And knelt down to be at eye level with the children. "Hello," he said warmly. "I am Commander Park. Thank you for coming to visit the space station." Minyu bowed politely. "Hello, Commander, I will do my best." Just stared at him, then went back to her bag to find a purple crayon. Held up her stuffed wolf. He is a wolf. He protects me from bad dreams." Smiled, looks very brave. "He is the bravest." Doctor leaned toward. "Commander, the Council has already begun surveillance. They started recording the moment the shuttle docked." Nodded slightly, he had expected this. "Good, let them watch." They walked through the corridor toward the diplomatic wing. Immediately ran ahead, her small feet pounding on the metal floor. Minyu chased after her, telling her to slow down. Walked slowly behind everyone, stopping every few steps to look at something interesting. His communicator buzzed. She checked it and went pale. "Commander," she said quietly, "the Council just sent an urgent query. They want to know why the children are not restrained." Kept walking. "Tell them restraints are not necessary. They are asking if the children are dangerous. Tell them yes, extremely dangerous. They might draw on the walls." Was not sure if he was joking. They reached the diplomatic observation suite, a large room with soft floors, comfortable furniture, and one entire wall made of transparent material showing the stars outside. Doctor had prepared the room earlier. There were toys scattered across the floor, building blocks, paper, crayons, small figures shaped like spaceships and aliens. The children entered the room and stopped. For about 3 seconds. Then Minyu saw a toy shuttle that looked exactly like the one his uncle flew. He ran toward it, saw Minyu running and decided that whatever he wanted, she wanted more. She sprinted after him, bouncing under her arm. They reached the shuttle at the same time. "I saw it first," Minyu said. "No, I want it," said. "I am older, I get it first." "That is not fair. Life is not fair." His face twisted with rage. She was 6 years old, and that was the worst thing anyone had ever said to her. She grabbed the shuttle. Minyu grabbed it back. For a moment they both pulled, neither willing to let go. Then bit Minyu's hand. Minyu screamed and let go. He stared at his hand where small tooth marks were visible. His eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. He would not cry in front of the adults. Clutched the shuttle, triumphant for exactly 2 seconds before she realized what she had done. Her lip trembled. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not mean to." Lieutenant was already there. She knelt between them, her voice calm and soft. "We do not bite, even when we are angry. Biting hurts people." "I know," started crying. "I was just so mad." "I understand. Being mad is okay. Biting is not okay. Can you say sorry to Minyu?" Turned to Minyu, tears running down her cheeks. "I am sorry I bit you." Minyu looked at his hand, then he sighed. It is okay, I should have shared. Do you want the shuttle? Held it out. We can play with it together. Within 30 seconds, they were on the floor together, making the shuttle fly through space battles against invisible enemies. Lieutenant stood up and took a deep breath. She looked at Commander, who was watching with a small smile. That, he said, is exactly what the Council needs to see. Meanwhile, in the observation room 3 floors above, the Council representatives watched through hidden cameras. High Arbiter stood perfectly still, her compound eyes fixed on the screen. The small one attacked, Ambassador said. There is blood. Look, there are marks on the male child's hand. The adult intervened, Scholar noted, but not with punishment. She spoke to them softly. And now they play together, said slowly, as if nothing happened. On the screen had found her corner. She sat with her back against the window, the stars glittering behind her, and drew quietly. She had not participated in the conflict. She had not even looked up. That one shows no response to the violence, observed. She has been conditioned to ignore it. This is evidence of systematic desensitization. They have trained her not to react to harm. Or, said carefully, she simply does not consider it important. How can violence not be important? Had no answer. On the screen, Minyu was now showing how to make the shuttle do a barrel roll. Laughed so hard she fell over. Minyu laughed too, the gap in his teeth visible. The injured one said, He is smiling, he was bitten moments ago. His hand still bears marks, yet he smiles. Conditioning, insisted. They have trained him to suppress pain response. But even did not sound sure anymore. In the suite below, Doctor approached carefully. He knelt beside her and looked at her drawing. What are you making? He asked. Held up the paper. It showed a tall figure with multiple arms and large eyes, surrounded by stars. The bug lady said, from the picture you showed us on the shuttle, had shown them images of the council species so they would not be scared, had been fascinated by High Arbiter. Do you think she is scary? Asked. Shook her head. I think she is pretty. Look, I gave her flowers. Around the figure, had drawn colorful flowers floating in space. In the observation room, High Arbiter saw the drawing on the screen. She saw herself, rendered in crayon, surrounded by impossible floating flowers. She said nothing, but she did not look away. Commander stood by the window of the suite, watching the children play, joined him. Day 1, she said quietly, how do you think it is going? The council is confused, said. That is good. Confused is better than certain. When they were certain, they wanted to invade Earth. Now they are watching a 6-year-old bite a 9-year-old and then apologize and become friends again. They have never seen anything like it. Is that enough? No, watched Minyu help stack blocks while Drew quietly nearby. But it is a start. We have 2 more days. 2 more days to show them what human childhood really is. Followed his gaze. What is human childhood really, sir? Thought for a moment. Chaos, he said. Beautiful, messy, painful, joyful chaos. And somehow we all survive it and become better for it. Looked at, who was now wearing a block tower on her head like a crown, while Minyu applauded. I hope they understand, she said. So do I, Lieutenant, so do I. The council observers worked in shifts. They watched the human children every moment, recording everything, analyzing every movement and sound. They expected to find evidence of abuse, trauma, and cruelty. What they found instead made no sense to them. On the morning of the 2nd day, sat by the window drawing as usual. She had filled dozens of pages with images of stars, ships, aliens, and flowers. Doctor had given her more paper twice already. Scholar watched through the observation screen, fascinated despite herself. In her species, young were born with complete knowledge. They never needed to learn, never needed to create, never needed to discover. The idea of a child making something from nothing was strange and beautiful to her. She requested permission to speak with the child directly. Commander considered it carefully, then agreed. Was the most open-minded of the council observers. If anyone might understand human children, it was her. Entered the suite slowly. Her feathers shimmered blue and silver under the lights. She was smaller than the other aliens, about the size of an adult human, with large golden eyes and a curved beak. The other children stared. Minyu stepped slightly in front of a protective reflex he did not even notice. Clutched. But just looked up from her drawing and smiled. "You are the bird lady," she said. "I drew you yesterday." Blinked, "You drew me." Shuffled through her papers and pulled one out. It showed an avian figure with bright feathers, looking up at stars. Around the figure had drawn smaller stars like a crown. "I made you pretty," said simply. "Do you like it?" Took the paper with trembling claws. No young of any species had ever created something for her. No one had ever looked at her and thought to make a gift, freely, without being asked. "It is beautiful," whispered. Beamed, "I have more crayons. Do you want to draw with me?" Did not know what to say. She had never drawn anything in her life. Her species did not create art. They were born knowing everything they needed, and art was not considered necessary. "I do not know how," she admitted. Patted the floor beside her. "I can teach you. It is easy. You just make what you feel." In the observation room above, High Arbiter watched this exchange with growing confusion. A human child was offering to teach an adult alien. The child showed no fear, no hesitation. She simply saw someone who did not know something and offered to help. "This is unexpected," said. Ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "The child is attempting to influence our observer. This is manipulation." "She is 7 years old," said flatly. "She offered to share her crayons." Had no response. Later that afternoon, something happened that sent the council into emergency session. Minyu was playing with blocks when he suddenly stopped, put his hand to his mouth, and made a strange face. Then he reached into his mouth and pulled out something small and white. A tooth. Blood dripped from his gums. The tooth sat in his palm, tiny and slightly red. In the observation room, alarms went off. Medical alerts flashed. The council believed they were witnessing serious injury. But Minyu just grinned, showing the new gap in his mouth where the tooth had been. "Another one," he announced proudly. "That is 4 now." Lieutenant came over with a tissue. "Let me see." Minyu opened his mouth wide, checked the gap, nodded, and handed him the tissue. "Hold this against it for a minute. The bleeding will stop." "Can I keep the tooth?" "Of course." Produced a small plastic container. Minyu dropped the tooth inside, looking extremely pleased with himself. "What is a tooth fairy?" asked. She had seen human children trade teeth before. "A magical creature," Minyu explained. "You put your tooth under your pillow at night, and the tooth fairy takes it and leaves money." His eyes went wide. "Money for teeth?" "Only baby teeth. When your big teeth come in, the fairy does not want them." In the observation room, the council stared at the screen in complete bewilderment. "Let me understand," said slowly. "Human children lose parts of their body regularly, and this is normal." "And they celebrate it," added, sounding disturbed. "They invent magical creatures who purchase the lost body parts." "The child is not in pain," Scholar observed from her seat. She had returned from the suite, still holding his drawing. "He is happy. He sees this as a sign of growth." "Because it is," Doctor's voice came through the communication channel. He had been listening. "Human children have 2 sets of teeth. The first set falls out to make room for adult teeth. It is completely natural. The tooth fairy tradition helps children see it as exciting rather than scary." "You lose teeth and regrow them," repeated. "Your species can regenerate." "Only teeth, and only once, but yes." The council members looked at each other. They had studied human biology, but knowing something and seeing it were different. These small creatures could lose parts of themselves and simply grow new ones. They bled and smiled. They felt pain and celebrated it as progress. What kind of species was this? The most significant observation came on the evening of the second day. Was playing near the door when her stuffed wolf slipped from her grip, bounced twice, and rolled through the door into a restricted corridor before anyone could stop him. Froze. For 1 second, she simply stared at the empty doorway. Then she screamed. It was not a scream of pain. It was a scream of absolute loss, total heartbreak, complete devastation. She screamed as if the world was ending. The council observers jumped to high alert. Medical teams were called. Security prepared to intervene. But Lieutenant was already moving. She ran to the corridor, spotted the stuffed wolf lying against the far wall, and retrieved it in seconds. She returned and knelt in front of holding out. Grabbed the wolf and clutched him to her chest. Her scream stopped instantly. Within 5 seconds, she was smiling. Within 10 seconds, she was telling that she had been very worried about him and he should not run away again. The crisis was over. In the observation room, Ambassador replayed the footage 3 times. "I do not understand," he said. "The object has no life. It is fabric and stuffing. It has no function. Yet the child treats it as if it were real. She mourned its loss as she would mourn a living creature." Pack bonding, said quietly. She had read about this human trait. Humans bond with anything. Animals, objects, even machines. They form emotional connections that logic cannot explain. "But why a predator?" Pointed at the screen. "That toy is shaped like a wolf. A wolf is a predator on Earth. Why would a human child bond with an image of something that hunts her kind?" Doctor's voice came through the channel again. He had been listening the whole time. "May I answer, Ambassador?" "Proceed." "Because we were prey once." His voice was calm and thoughtful. "Millions of years ago, wolves hunted humans. We were afraid of them, but instead of just being afraid, we learned to understand them. We studied them. We earned their trust. We turned enemies into family. Today, wolves are dogs and dogs are our closest companions." He paused. "Carries a stuffed wolf because it represents something humans believe deeply. Nothing has to stay our enemy. Even the thing that once hunted us can become our friend. We teach this to our children before they can even understand it. By the time they grow up, it is part of who they are." The observation room was silent. Ambassador looked at the screen where sat happily, telling about the adventure he had been on. "You turn predators into friends," he said softly. "You bond with things that should terrify you. You teach your children that nothing is permanently an enemy." Yes. Thought about his own people. They had fought wars for thousands of years because they could not imagine their enemies becoming anything else. "That," he said slowly, "is either the most foolish thing I have ever heard or the most incredible." On the screen was now introducing to Minu's collection of teeth. The children continued playing as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Which to them nothing had. It was just another day. On the morning of the third day, Ambassador demanded a real test. He stood before the council with his scales bristling, his patience exhausted. For 2 days he had watched human children play, fight, cry, laugh, and reconcile. He had seen them draw pictures for aliens, lose teeth with smiles, and scream over stuffed toys. None of it proved anything. "We have watched long enough," declared. "These children have only shown us calm situations, easy moments. What happens when they face real danger? What happens when they are truly afraid?" High Arbiter considered this. "What do you propose?" "A fear test. Introduce them to something frightening. See how the adults respond. If humans are truly nurturing, they will protect their young. If they are the savages I believe they are, they will force the children to face danger alone. They will demand strength over safety." The council murmured in discussion. Scholar looked uncomfortable. "This seems cruel," she said. "The children have done nothing wrong." "The children will not be harmed," assured. "We will introduce a large, armored, intimidating, but completely harmless. To us, it will be clear that there is no danger. To small children who have never seen such a creature, it will be terrifying. We will observe the human adult response." Was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded. "Commander must agree." Smiled. "If he refuses, it will prove he has something to hide." In the diplomatic suite, received the request with a cold feeling in his chest. They wanted to scare the children. They wanted to watch how he responded. He could refuse. He could end this entire demonstration and take the children home. But if he refused, would claim victory. The council would assume humans had something to hide. The sanctions would come, maybe worse. He looked at the children, was drawing as always. Minyu was building a tower, was making act out a story involving space pirates and treasure. They were so small, so innocent. They had no idea that the future of human-alien relations rested on their tiny shoulders. "I agree," said into his communicator, "but I want it on record that I protested, and if any child is harmed, this alliance is over." "Understood," his voice replied. "They will enter in 10 minutes." Knelt in front of the children. "Listen carefully," he said. "In a few minutes, someone new is going to visit. They might look scary, but they are not dangerous. They just want to meet you." Minyu squared his shoulders. "I am not scared." Clutched, "Is it a monster?" "No, just someone who looks different. Can you all be brave for me?" Looked up from her drawing. "Will you stay with us?" Smiled. "I will not leave. Lieutenant will not leave. We will be right here." The door opened. They entered. It was massive, 8 feet tall, covered in armored plates the color of storm clouds. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its shell in threatening reds and oranges. Its face was a cluster of sensory organs that looked like wounds. When it moved, its joints clicked like bones breaking. There was actually a council clerk named. He processed shipping documents and had never frightened anyone in his life. He had been chosen specifically because he was gentle and kind. But the children did not know that. Screamed and dove behind Lieutenant's legs. She pressed her face against uniform and did not look up. Her whole body shook with fear. Did not push her away. She did not tell her to be brave. She simply knelt down, wrapped her arms around, and held her close. "It is okay," she whispered. "I am here. Nothing will hurt you. It is okay to be scared of new things. I have got you." Whimpered, "I want to go home." "I know, baby. I know, but you are safe. I promise you are safe." In the observation room, the council watched in silence. The human adult had not forced the child to face the fear. She had not demanded courage. She had simply held her and spoken softly and promised protection. On the screen, Minyu reacted differently. The moment they entered, Minyu positioned himself between the creature and his small hands curled into fists. His gap-toothed jaw clenched. His whole body went tight, ready to fight. He was 9 years old, 3 feet tall, and weighed less than this arm. But he stood there like a soldier. "Stay back," he told them. His voice shook, but he did not move. Ambassador leaned forward. "What is he doing?" "He is protecting the younger child," said. "Even though he is terrified, even though he has no chance of success, he put himself between the perceived threat and someone weaker. He is a child." Yes, and his first instinct was to defend. The stopped moving. He had not expected this. He looked down at the tiny human standing before him, fists raised, teeth bared, absolutely terrified but refusing to run. He did not know what to do. Then moved. She stepped out from behind Minyu. She walked slowly toward her small feet making soft sounds on the floor. In her hands, she held a piece of paper. "No," Minyu hissed, "come back." But kept walking. She stopped in front of. She had to lean back to see his face far above her. The bioluminescent patterns on his shell pulsed faster as he looked down at her. Held up the paper. It was a drawing. She had made it just moments ago, after warned them about the visitor. It showed a large armored figure surrounded by flowers and stars. At the bottom, in the clumsy writing of a 7-year-old, were 2 words, "New friend." "I made you pretty," said. "Do you like it?" The observation room went completely silent. Stared at the drawing, then he stared at the child, then he looked at the drawing again. No one had ever given him anything before. No one had ever looked at his armored shell and saw something worth decorating with flowers. "I like it very much," he said. His voice was deep and rumbling but gentle. "Thank you." Smiled. "You can keep it. I have more paper." She turned and walked back to her corner as if nothing unusual had happened. She sat down and started drawing again. Behind's legs peeked out. She saw that was not scared. She saw that Minu was not scared anymore either. She looked at the who was carefully holding a crayon drawing like it was precious treasure. "Is he nice?" whispered. "I think so," said. "Do you want to say hello?" Shook her head. "Maybe later." "That is completely okay. You do not have to if you are not ready." In the observation room, High Arbiter turned to Ambassador. "You asked what humans do when their children are afraid," she said. "Now we know. They hold them, they speak softly. They do not force courage. They allow fear and offer comfort through it." Said nothing. The male child positioned himself as a defender without being asked. The quiet child approached danger with a gift of art. The youngest child was held and soothed until she felt safe enough to observe. 3 children, 3 responses, all of them protected but none of them the same. Scholar added softly, "They do not break their children to remove fear. They stay beside them until fear passes naturally. This is not cruelty. This is something else entirely." Below in the suite, the still held drawing. He looked at Commander. "I am sorry," said. "I did not want to frighten them." Shook his head. "You have nothing to apologize for. You showed them exactly what they needed to see." "What was that?" Smiled. "That sometimes scary things are not dangerous. Sometimes new things become friends. Sometimes the monster is just someone who needed a drawing." Looked at the paper again. A creature made of armor surrounded by flowers. "I would like to request a copy of this for my personal quarters," he said formally, "if the child permits." Heard this, she looked up and smiled. "I can make you another one," she said. "Do you like blue flowers or pink flowers?" "I do not know," admitted. "I have never thought about it before." "Then I will make you both." She turned back to her paper and started drawing. In the observation room, High Arbiter made a decision. "End the test," she ordered. "We have seen enough. Call the council to final session. It is time for a verdict." Tomorrow would determine everything. But tonight, a terrifying armored alien sat cross-legged on the floor of a diplomatic suite, while a 7-year-old girl taught him which colors looked best together. And somewhere in the universe, something shifted. The Grand Chamber was full. Word had spread across Nexus Prime about the human children, and species who had never interacted with humanity came to watch the verdict. They filled the observation galleries, crowded the corridors, watched on screens throughout the station. Commander Park stood in the center of the chamber again, but this time he was not alone. Lieutenant stood beside him. Dr. Lee was there too. And behind them, in special seats brought just for this occasion, sat the 3 children. Had her bag of crayons. Minu sat up straight, trying to look serious, held and whispered to him about all the strange aliens she could see. High Arbiter rose from her seat. The chamber fell silent. 3 days ago," she began, "the Council brought charges against humanity. We accused your species of cruelty toward your young. We believed, based on our evidence, that human children were victims of systematic abuse. We demanded proof that this was not true." She paused, looking down at the 3 small figures in their seats. We received that proof. The chamber rustled with whispers, felt something loosen in his chest. The council has deliberated for 6 hours, continued. We have reviewed every moment of observation. We have analyzed every interaction. We have consulted experts from dozens of species, and we have reached several conclusions. She lifted a document, the official findings of the Galactic Council. First, human children experience pain, fear, conflict, and distress regularly. This is true. We witness tears, anger, blood, and screaming. By the standards of most species, human childhood appears traumatic. Tensed, this did not sound like the start of good news. Second, human adults do not prevent this suffering. They allow their children to fall, to fight, to fail. They watch pain happen without stopping it. By the standards of most species, this appears to be neglect. The whispers in the chamber grew louder. Ambassador looked satisfied. However, said firmly, and the chamber went quiet again, the council has also observed something unprecedented. She set down the document and spoke from memory. Human adults do not prevent all suffering, but they remain present through all of it. They do not abandon young in distress. They do not punish fear. They do not demand perfection. When a human child falls, an adult helps them rise. When a human child cries, an adult holds them. When a human child is afraid, an adult stays beside them until the fear passes. She looked directly at. We have watched your children experience difficulty and recover. We have watched them fight and then forgive. We have watched them face fear and find courage. And through all of it, the adults were there, not forcing, not commanding, simply present. Scholar rose from her seat. May I add to the record, High Arbiter? Nodded. Feathers shimmered as she stepped forward. I spent time with these children. The smallest one offered to teach me how to draw. She did not know me. She had no reason to help me. But she saw that I did not know something, and her first instinct was to share her knowledge. She held up the drawing had given her, the avian figure surrounded by stars. My species is born knowing everything we need. We never teach. We never learn. We never create. Watching this child make something from nothing and then give it freely to a stranger was the most remarkable thing I have witnessed in my lifetime. She returned to her seat. Ambassador stood slowly. The chamber held its breath. He had been the strongest voice against humanity. I called humans savages, he said. I believed their children were brutalized captives. I demanded this test because I was certain it would prove my suspicions correct. He looked at the children. Minyu stared back at him without flinching. I was wrong. The chamber erupted in noise, raised his hand for silence. When they entered that room, I expected the human adults to force their children to face it, to demand strength, to punish fear. Instead, I watched a woman hold a terrified child and whisper comfort. I watched a boy place himself between danger and someone weaker, even though he was shaking with fear. I watched a girl walk toward something terrifying and offer a gift. He paused. My people shelter our young from all hardship. When they emerge into the world, they are fragile. They do not know how to face difficulty because they have never experienced it. They do not know how to recover from failure because they have never failed. He turned to face the full council. Human children practice everything before they need it. They practice conflict so they learn to make peace. They practice fear so they learn to be brave. They practice falling so they learn to rise. By the time they reach adulthood, these skills are automatic. This is not cruelty. This is preparation. He looked at. I understand now why humanity spread so quickly among the stars. Your children are not your weakness. They are the reason you cannot be stopped. The chamber was silent for a long moment. High Arbiter spoke the final words. The Council dismisses all charges against humanity. The evidence has shown that human methods of raising young, while different from our own, are not cruelty. They are a system of building resilience, compassion, and courage. Humanity is cleared of wrongdoing. Closed his eyes, relief flooded through him. Furthermore, continued, the council formally apologizes for the accusation. We judged without understanding. We assumed without evidence. This was our failure, not yours. She stepped down from her podium and walked toward the children. 300 species watched as the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council approached 3 small humans. She stopped in front of. "Little one," she said, "I understand you make pictures for people." Nodded. "I gave one to the bird lady and the armor man and my new friend. Would you make one for me?" His face lit up. "What is your favorite color?" Considered this. No one had ever asked her such a question. "I do not know," she admitted. "That is okay," said. "I will make you all the colors." She pulled out her crayons and started drawing right there, on the floor of the grand chamber, while 300 species watched. The tribunal was over. The children had won. 2 weeks later, the UNSS Harmony prepared to leave Nexus Prime. The children were going home. Commander stood at the observation window, watching the station grow smaller. Doctor and Lieutenant stood beside him. "We got lucky," said. 3 ordinary children saved us all." "Not luck," said quietly. "They are just kids. They do not know how to be anything else. The council wanted proof that we do not hurt our children. The kids gave them something better." "What was that?" "They showed them what we raise our children to become. Kind to strangers, brave when scared, forgiving after fights, creative when confused, protective of the weak." She smiled. "They showed them that human adults are just bigger versions of human children. Everything we are, we learned when we were small." Behind them, the children played, was showing the stars through the window. Minu was writing a report for his school about the aliens he met, had a new stack of paper and was already filling it with drawings. A package had arrived just before departure. It contained a message from High Arbiter. "I am displaying your gift in my office. Council members have asked where it came from. I tell them it was made by a human child who thought I looked pretty surrounded by flowers. They do not know what to say. Neither do I, perhaps that is the point." She had attached an image. In her office, on the wall behind her desk, hung a crayon drawing of a figure surrounded by all the colors of the universe. At the bottom, in wobbly writing, were 2 words, "New friend." Looked at the image for a long time. Then he went to check on the children. Looked up when he approached. "Commander, do you want a picture too?" He smiled. "I would like that very much." "What should I draw?" Thought about everything that had happened, the accusations, the fear, the moments when everything could have gone wrong, and then the moments when 3 small children changed everything just by being themselves. "Draw whatever makes you happy," he said. Thought for a moment, then she started drawing. When she finished, she handed him the paper. It showed a group of figures standing together. Humans and aliens, tall and small, all holding hands. Above them were stars. Below them was a single word. "Family." Held the drawing carefully. "It is perfect," he said. And somewhere in the galaxy, things had changed forever. Not because of weapons or technology or power. Because 3 children rolled into a council chamber with crayons, toys, and teeth, and proved that humanity was worth knowing after all.